So with the USMCA agreement that is being negotiated between U.S., Mexico, and Canada, and Mexico has already ratified it. Canada is also on board, and so it promotes no tariffs for energy trade, of course, across the three countries. What effect, if any, do you think that will have on the pipeline infrastructure within Canada?
When the original free trade agreement was negotiated among Canada and the United States in 1988, there was one of the issues was a proportionality clause, and that was that there was a time during the OPEC years, were still fresh in everybody's mind, when there was a shortage of oil instead of drowning in the stuff. And what the proportionality clause, which was quite controversial in Canada, was that if we would not shut off any oil production, if it was shut in for conservation or supply measures, we couldn't reduce just the United States and supply Canada. It had to be proportional. So if we were going to, for some reason, shut off oil, this was seen as a loss of Canadian sovereignty at the time. There was a Conservative government, so there was a different set of same old scare tactics, just a slightly different subject. We've always felt fairly comfortable with the proportionality clause of the original free trade agreement, which was expanded to NAFTA. And I can't think of any other nice way to say this. We're really not sure what your president's going to do next.
We aren't either.
I'm sorry. I've got, there's some American friends in the room. I've got American friends. I grew up with American paychecks when my dad got a job for the Canadian division of a unit of Weatherford. But that is something we thought, as the NAFTA was reopened, we thought, well, surely to God, they're not going to muck with the proportionality agreement. Of course, this was before the U.S. became an exporter. So we have always thought, I think I described this at dinner last night for our American friends here, that in Canada, we've described living next door to the United States as sleeping with an elephant. And, you snuggle up and, it's, as long as it's asleep, it's nice and warm and cozy. And then the dang thing wakes up, and in one direction, if it rolls south, you freeze. If it rolls north, you get crushed. And, and so we're hoping that, but again, if you watch the behavior of the activities, if there is a proportionality clause in NAFTA, could you please honor it? We've got Michigan is going to sue Line 5, the one that runs under the Mackinac Straits. They want that replaced. We've got our problems with Enbridge Line 3 and Keystone XL are not in Canada, incredibly. Got through the hurdles on that. Our challenges are on courts in Montana, courts in Nebraska, Minnesota, Michigan, wherever else some political figures there's votes to be gained by trashing oil. So since you are closer to the White House administration than I am, certainly, at least you're in a Republican state, when you get back, phone the big dog and tell them to honor the proportionality clause in NAFTA and leave the damn thing alone, and let's get some pipe going,
Just for you, David, I'm going to make sure that I do that. Specifically, I'm going to dial them up and call them, and we'll have that conversation.
I'll know you were successful on Twitter within a few minutes. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about the non-OECD countries want in on the energy. So how can Canada ensure its economic growth and also allow, I guess, those countries that want in?
Well, the Canadian climate debate, again, from our American friends, we're incredibly important people, as you know, because we only think about ourselves. Because Canada could be providing the energy to the world. It's a global phenomenon. So the statistics indicate 6.2 billion, or I think it's 83% of the population of the world, would still like to have the same wealth as the 1.2 billion in the OECD countries. And I blasted through it in a hurry, but think of what it's like to live in Europe or the OECD countries. Again, lights, you hit the wall, the switch, power comes on. You plug a socket and it's likely got electricity. You've got heat in the winter. You've got air conditioning in the summer. You've got public transportation. You've got an airport, international airport within a few miles. You've got a gas station within a couple of kilometers. Electric vehicles in the large urban centers make sense. And if you don't think about it, the whole world like this. And then you go out to the other 6.2 billion people in the world. There's 1 billion people that don't even have electricity. And again, a lot of people don't care. I mean, I care. So I look at the 6.2 billion people, and that's an incredible force. And so when we in Canada, or when we in the West, when the early negotiations on protecting the environment came out, there was originally started out in the 1972 United Nations Conference in Stockholm on the environment. Climate change wasn't an issue, but wealth transfer was. And Indira Gandhi said, well, you screwed up the world, Western, not us, from India. And why don't you just send us money? That was part of the Paris Agreement. We'd send them $100 billion to modernize. Well, if they modernize, they won't be buying Teslas, If we send them the money, they're going to buy a scooter. They're going to buy an internal combustion engine, and that's going to require fuel. And so to say that what we're going to do to fix the world's climate is deny the people that would like a share of our prosperity and wealth and health and opportunity fuel, or make them pay more for it, I just think that's wrong. I think I think that is morally reprehensible. That's where I draw my line in the sand. You talked about people, you talked about future generations. I can't do that. I can't decide. I'm okay. I don't care if you starve to death. I can't do that. So what Canada should do, same thing as LNG. There was an article in the paper this morning. Some environmentalist group in San Francisco sent out a standard piece that on the perils of LNG, that LNG is bad, picked up by the Globe and Mail by some 21-year-old well-intentioned reporter that printed it verbatim. And they said, well, if Canada supplies China with natural gas to replace the coal, and I'm talking about the CO2 content, I'm talking about particulate. Remember the Beijing Olympics, where they couldn't see 2 blocks? And they said, well, Canada ought not to do this, so we won't meet our Paris commitment if we develop LNG. Well, but China might. So if it's a global problem, why don't we have global solutions? So what could Canada do, to go back to the beginning? Take a global perspective. Just get our heads out of our wealthy sands, head in the sand, and look around, and Yeah, I was thinking of the ostrich. Yeah, you were thinking of the liberal, but anyway, I think I better stop now.
Thank you, David. With that, because we do need to wrap up our panel session, I would love to get each of you, if you could leave us with one key takeaway for today.
I had time to. Popped a gasket about a year ago when Trans Mountain, when Corrigan said, Alberta, why don't you just do something else and get with the program and embrace renewables? And I just realized that they had absolutely no idea how the economy works and what it means. Alberta without oil is Manitoba with mountains. Okay, we got 3 million too many people, and we can't all go to the west coast, the Salish Sea, and become whale watchers. So I went down the path of this book, and the most illuminating thing I discovered was really the internet. I started writing about 40 years ago, so I know I don't look old enough. But I was an old school reporter with mainline media, fact checkers. The newspaper came in the door and it had a little bit of everything, a bit of business news, and so I watched the media, and I think that media has been hollowed out by the internet way more than people fully understand. So we live in a completely fact-free world, and that was one of the greatest breakthroughs that I had. The politest thing I could do was the parallel universe thing. But what Vivian has done outstanding work. I've followed her for years. But what I wanted to do was understand, why do they believe this? And I said this earlier. How can Neil Young charter a plane, fly to Fort McMurray, rent 5 buses, have an entourage, fly back on a private jet, have the carbon footprint of a complete community in rural Africa. And everybody says, attaboy, Neil, you know, Hiroshima. And how can they believe that stuff? And so I really encourage it. It's affected our politics now. I think we learned that from Facebook and Brexit and the Trump election. And so what's coming up is a completely fact-free election, where there's going to be accusations made that if we do this, or Catherine McKenna, you know, you pay this carbon tax and cash your rebate check, and we'll stop forest fires. Well, I want you to stop. I know my time is up, but I really encourage you. I hear a lot from my peers in the oil and gas industry. I read this in the Globe today. I read this in the Herald. Well, you're the only guys that read those things anymore. 90% of the population gets their information here. The millennials get their information here. They can live on NBA scores, Justin Bieber, and Kim Kardashian. They don't need another single fact in the world. Keep that in mind, and it goes back to your first question, what can we do? I think that we'll outlast them at the fuel pump. Thank you very much.
Thank you.